Australia. We think this should be a bipartisan effort. Frankly, who would be against growth the way we're talking about here and protecting American workers the way we're talking about doing it in this bill? So we're looking forward to work with our compatriots across the aisle to make sure we get this done.
And if I could just add, John, on that point, if I could just add on that point, immigration was a distinguishing feature for President Trump during the campaign, not just from Hillary Clinton, but from 16 other Republican candidates. It was probably the single issue on which he most distinguished himself from the consensus of both parties. And I think a lot of politicians have woken up to that now, and they're starting to realize that they need to rethink our approach to immigration, which is, again, a big topic. Our legislation is a relatively modest, incremental step of trying to reform our green card system, not temporary visas, not enforcement or security measures, but our green card system to make sure that it serves American workers. Second, we've already had some interest from other senators in our party. Third, this is the kind of thing that in bigger past and failed efforts at comprehensive immigration reform that Democrats have suggested they could support as well. And I would suggest to them, I'd suggest to you, that if we can succeed on this kind of common sense, incremental reform to immigration, it might give the American people more confidence to tackle some of those more challenging issues.
Senators, you introduced a similar proposal back in February. It did not go anywhere. What are you hoping now that you have President Trump on board?
Well, I think what happens is we built on to that. As we said to you when we introduced the first version of RAISE, is that there would be more to come around the entire permanent visa green card issue. And that's what we've done today, is close that door. And as Tom just said, this is not trying to solve all the issues in immigration. It's looking at legal permanent visas. And that's what we're going to focus on.
So I would say, so President Trump has been, if I could address that too, President Trump has been deeply engaged on this from day one. I think this is probably our third or fourth visit to the Oval Office to work with President Trump. Our teams and his teams have been working regularly on it as well. The first version of the RAISE Act only addressed non-employment-based green cards, which, by the way, is over 80% of all the green cards we give out every single year. So President Trump at that time said that he wanted Senator Perdue and me to go back and take a look at the employment-based green cards as well, the EB-1 to the EB-5 green cards. We've done that. We consulted with experts. We've consulted with people who helped design the Canadian system, and we've come up with a system that is, again, similar to what senators in both parties have supported in the past, which is moving our employment-based green card system into a point system that rewards people who can speak English, who have high educational attainment, who have a job that's going to pay them more than the local economy typically pays, who can create their own companies. So we think that this is a newer and improved version that we've done at the President's request. And again, we've seen a lot of interest from senators already.
Some within the business community who say this could actually make the workforce weaker by cutting down on legal immigration by 50% over the next 10 years.
Well, let me address that. As a business guy, I can tell you that whoever says that really hasn't been in the real world, because what happens in the real world is we're competing with other countries for this talent, just like we're competing for other natural resources around the world. But right now, by going to a merit-based system, we will assure that the American economy can attract the best and the brightest. But it also protects American workers, because it no longer is focused on people who are family-related, but focuses on the merit-based qualifications of the people applying. And by the way, I think this is a humane system. We're giving people who are already in the system credit for being in the system. They came here, they applied in the right way, and we're going to give them preferential treatment in this process. If they can apply and get approved within the next year, they will not come into the merit system. But if they don't get approved by that time, they will get extra points in this system to accommodate the fact that they did this the right way.
And I would say, remember, this approach would more than double the number of green cards we give out every year based on ultra-high skilled, demonstrated ability to earn a high wage, to create new jobs in this country, and so forth. So some of the more controversial temporary visa programs like H-1B, H-2A, H-2B, not affected by this legislation. We're not trying to boil the ocean here and change everything in our immigration law. David and I both consulted with some of the business leaders in our community, some of the business leaders in the tech community, for instance, that want to see more H-1B visas. We can deal with that another day, but here's what we can say. You're going to get a lot more permanent legal residents and ultimately American citizens who have those kind of high-skilled backgrounds in science and engineering and computer programming and so forth. And isn't it better to get that kind of high-skilled worker here on a permanent basis so they can be an American citizen for the rest of their lives and have to worry about renewing a visa every 3 years?
Let me say one other thing, too. I think it adds to the diversity that we're going to bring in as well because we eliminate the country caps. The country quota system is a distortion. It's over 60 years old. It is not working today for us. And what we do in this, wherever you are, if you're qualified, you can come in here and you have a vision and you have education and you can get the point system qualification, you're going to have a future in America. And I think that's a great thing to tell the rest of the world.
Right, and President Trump stressed speaking English and not being on welfare immediately. And Cuban immigrants are infamous for coming immediately and collecting welfare. Could you say how this bill would affect or not affect people who are ripping off the wet foot, dry foot policy?
Well, first of all, the ratio will change of people who come here for work, and this focuses on the nuclear family, not the extended family. And so what that means is that a higher percentage of people coming in, number one, will have jobs, and that's the focus of this bill. Today, over half of all immigrants in America are in households that participate in the welfare system, and that's a function of a broken immigration system over time. What this does is basically reward people for coming in, getting jobs, and being participatory in our economy and constructive in growing our economy.
Do you worry about these
I'm sorry?
Do you worry about these high-skilled immigrants taking jobs away from Americans? You say this is about providing more jobs for Americans, but are these going to be competing with folks here at home?
Well, actually, what this does is it focuses on places where we don't have plenty of workers. That's the issue. You can talk about our education system or whatever, but this basically opens America up for the highest educated and most talented people in the world. Isn't that what we want? And at the same time, it protects the workers that we have now in those industries.
And I would add, if you look at, again, economic performance over my lifetime, the last 40 years, if you have a high school degree or less, your wages have been stagnant or they've declined. The more educational attainment you have, the better off you've been doing, which means the more we can attract higher skilled, better educated workers who speak English, who are going to get a higher wage themselves, the more we're going to be meeting that kind of economic demand, while also alleviating some of the pressure on people who are working on their feet and working with their hands all day long, the kind of people who take a shower after they get done with work, not before they go to work.
Senators, I'm sure you've heard from the critics out there who don't believe that this is a kind-spirited law, that they call this very mean-spirited, and they say it appears especially to target Latino immigrants. To that you say?
Well, I don't see that that's well-founded at all. And what I'm focused on is the fact that by focusing on a merit-based immigration system, and getting away from the country quota system. The country quota system has more bias in it than anything else, and it's abused greatly. What this does is it lets everybody compete individually. What fairer way can you do than have a situation where everybody has the same level right to get into this country if they qualify? And I think that's a great thing. It's been proven in Canada and Australia. It's very popular up there, and right now I think you're going to see it'll be very popular here.
Yeah, and also, just let me finish up. One example of that is take the diversity lottery. The diversity lottery is preposterous. It serves no economic purpose. It serves no humanitarian purpose. It doesn't really even serve diversity because the region of the world that's accelerated the fastest over the last few years in terms of winning the diversity lottery is Europe. What we're doing here has no bias towards any region of the world. It has a bias towards ultra high skilled individuals who can come to this country and stand on their own 2 feet.
Last question.
I'm sorry?
Do you think you'll really get Democratic sponsorship given the current environment?
Well, we don't like the current environment. Nobody does. But why wouldn't you support this? It's pro-growth, it's pro-worker, and it's actually been proven to work. This is not an experiment. This has already been proven to work. So we're anxious to have those dialogues with the people both on both sides of the aisle.
And I would just say, I would say too about Democratic support, and for that matter, some Republican support. Look, we all know that our immigration system hasn't been working for Americans for a long time. That's why we've proposed this legislation about green cards. However, we failed as a Congress in 2006, in 2007, in 2013, before Senator Perdue and I arrived, to do everything under the sun on immigration. And that's in part because the American people don't have confidence in Washington to deal with immigration. That's why 60 to 70% of Americans favor the principles behind this bill. What we can do, though, is take common sense incremental steps that will improve our green card system while also giving the American people more confidence that Washington is finally looking out for their interests. And maybe that confidence will carry over to future immigration debates as well.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.